So let's go about it. So once again, very warm welcome to the session today. Before we start, let's do some housekeeping. So the webinar is planned for about an hour, including question and answers. We have decided to leave the camera out and also the voice. So please post your questions into the Q&A section. The questions will not be posted to the audience due to privacy regulations. However, of course, we see it and we will answer it during the session. If we should run out of time in the end, we will answer them individually. What's happening today? We will have a brief introduction to Enginsight, to the company, to the go-to-market strategy, to the platform, and obviously also how everything that we're doing is paying into the digital sovereignty, and you know, what is it you and customers gain with what we're doing. The session will be a combination of PowerPoint and showing the UI, and also a spoiler, so to say, a bit upfront. Next week we also have pure technical sessions in addition to the today, let's say, a bit more general and sales-oriented topics. So very much expecting we are catching your interest. Do join us next week. Potentially also invite, you know, pre-sales or tech colleague of yours into the session, as I will have pure pre-sales, very much tech-oriented colleagues with me. So I would say let's start a bit with who we are. So I'm Thomas. I'm together with my colleague Lutz running the internationalization at Enginsight. Some of you know me already for some time, but maybe enough to me at this point. Lutz, would be great if you also do a short introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. I welcome everybody else as well. My name is Lutz. I started 5 years ago at Enginsight as a sales, and I listened carefully to the tech guys during the tech sessions. So I'm showing the UI today, and I'm happy that you're here.
All right. Okay. So what is it all about? Revolutionize automated security and risk management. Control your digital sovereignty with Enginsight. If I would have given that session, let's say 4 months ago, obviously the subheadline would be different. I would say with the craziness that is happening in the US, this whole topic of digital sovereignty has become way more importance, or has gotten way more importance. So that's a broad discussed topic across media, across countries. If I look at digital sovereignty, it means that, you know, do you have full control about your IT infrastructure, your data, your digital processes? You know, do you have a technological independency? I don't want to discuss the term digital sovereignty now in length and have the different viewpoints on it, but I believe everyone understands that with what's happening in the US, with, let's say, the changes in the administration, with the DOGE activities about effectiveness in public infrastructure, let's put it that way, that touches a lot on this topic, what's digital, what's sovereign, coming from the US, and what is the impact for us here overseas, if it is discussed to re-sign on the Cloud Act. If I would say is still low discussion, but I believe that becoming bigger, that discussion about this whole Patriot Act topic, the question on where's your data residing and who has access to it, respectively, who can force access to it, that got way more importance. And that is totally independent if that is something that you as an end customer have to take care of, or that you as a partner towards, or in a consulting, in an advising position towards your end customers have to deal with. All right, so let's start with a brief on Enginsight itself. As I said, the company, the go-to-market, and so on. So what we are a German headquartered and founded company based in Jena. For those who don't know that, some say Jena is a Silicon Valley in Germany. I know Lutz likes to emphasize that phrase again. So I'm also happy to post that in here. All the founders of the company are in the organization, and together we build not only the product, but also the company and the business. What is it that we're doing? We do deliver and develop an all-in-one platform for security and risk management. So it's a combination of attack and defense tools that play into that topic of security and risk management. I said before, we are a German company. However, we also have all our development in-house. So it's 100% German developed and 100% own code base. So why is that relevant? Also in this whole discussion of digital sovereignty, it means that we don't have dependencies on third-party components. So we're completely free and designing and developing the product. And also, since it's one code base, it allows us to gain a lot of correlation between the different, I'm going to show that later on, between the different components, and also gain a lot of automation out of it. A few words to the go-to-market strategy. So that's a clear two-tier channel strategy. That means we go via distribution partners in the respective countries or areas through to knowledgeable partners towards the end customers. Yes, we do have end customer contact with sales and pre-sales, but all the business in itself is going through the channels. Now, what's our market? If you see on the top line, it says enterprise security for an SMB market. Now, that's a German company. It's a German definition. That means it ranges from the tens of users towards the multi-thousand of users. Coming from as a technical product, we look at IT itineraries, IT assets. So it ranges from the tens of components towards the tens of thousands of servers and clients in an organization. That is kind of the size that we're looking at. As the topic of verticals, security doesn't care about a vertical. And yes, the requirements might be different depending on the size of an organization in terms of complexity of network infrastructure, in terms of compliance to be fulfilled. However, the base topic is the same. So there is no vertical restriction in where we are going to. So production, healthcare, public, manufacturing, trading, finance, insurance, logistics, tourism, you name it. I actually read this down here, the small paper that I have next to me, just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Customers is a car dealer with one shop, car dealers with multiple shops. It's automotive suppliers, tech consultancies, hospitals, municipalities, local, state government as well, banks, insurances, it's media, it's basically a cross range. Right, so if you see that from a partner perspective, I would say it's very difficult to find a customer that our solution would not fit into. Let me hop a bit into the product already. Now, the organization is ISO 27001 certified. That might not relate directly to the product on the first view. However, it means that everything we do has been running or has been going through a compliance check. And that means we have learned on technical and organizational level on what an organization has to fulfill to require or to acquire the compliance. Now, a lot of that experience found its way back into the product, right? So that we say, how can you easily support compliance efforts of organizations? It will be more clear once you see the UI, and also even more clear during the next session, on the technical session, as we go in deeper into the product. But a lot of what we're doing is also fostered by own experience, which I believe is an extreme benefit. Talking about digital sovereignty, talking about where does data reside and who has access to it, or who can force access to it. Now, that's kind of pointing into the delivery of the product. And you see it's SaaS, on-prem, OEM, white label. Now, what we really do is we deliver a software platform that is deployed on-prem. Now you can still discuss if for a customer point of view, that's still a SaaS solution, but let's see it from our vendor point of view is that we deliver an on-prem solution, a platform. And these platform can then have the different, let's say, deployment models. On the one hand, a partner can deploy the platform and then bring end customers on the platform running it themselves, basically offering as a service. Or the end customer can deploy the platform and then run their own, if they're strong enough in terms of IT capabilities and manpower, can run that within their organization. Now, if you deploy that platform on an AWS, on an Azure, on a nationwide hosting organization, on a local hosting organization, in your own premises, that's all up to you, respectively, to your end customer. That's a matter of risk evaluation. That's a matter on how and where do you emphasize you want to have your digital sovereignty. Now, we do run a SaaS version that is for testing. So if anyone is there that likes to have a check on the platform and likes to, let's say, play with it and see how it works, I will provide a link afterwards in the on the last slide, and when we also distribute the slides here, where you can sign up and then gain access and play with it, maybe before you say I want to actually install it on-prem and do the next step. However, that is not used commercially in our areas. Talking about on-prem, talking about a partner-led system, then obviously we also have multi-tenant capabilities. Lutz will show that later on when we show the UI, and seeing that if you build a service and if you want to provision customers into that service, then it all runs up into the service and you have a centralized management of customers and assets itineraries. But more to that later on. All right, that was so much to what I wanted to say on the company. As Lutz is monitoring the Q&A and didn't say anything, I expect there are no questions up to now. If there are questions, do me a favor, just drop them in so we can answer them on the fly. What I'm going to show next in the next two slides is on the first slide, the components of which the whole platform consists of, and B, on the process idea that we have when we have developed the solution. That will help understanding when we go into the UI and how we look at the product and at the, I would say generally at the security approach that we work on. So let's just go over to the next slide. This will just pop open now in a sequence. And as I said, these are the various components within the Enginsight platform. And let me start from the left to the right. So the first component, that is the Hector. That's an automated pen testing tool, right? That is doing brute forcing attacks, that is vulnerability scanning, that is service discovery. There's a long list of various attack vectors that can also be checked in our documentation. We will also provide the link towards the documentation. And that is, so to say, the one component. Then we have a second component, which is the Watchdog. The Watchdog is a network monitoring and inventory tool, right? That runs on ping, port check, SNMP, ARP request, basically getting you an overview of which IP-related itinerary/inventory you have in the organization. That's a component that's all the components are Debian-based installations that you can place within the Watchdog, that you can place within your network or network segments in order to get a full view on your inventory. The Watchdog is a free component that always comes within the software, so go use it. The next item is the Observer. That is meant for web security. It's an scan on web servers/web applications that scans, and it's a defined outside scan. It's a non-invasive scan, so we really read everything that is readable from the website. So vulnerabilities, we can performance in terms of availability. I'm missing the word now. Performance checks, availability checks, or response checks of the website. Is and does the website use encryption? What kind of version of encryption? What kind of software can be seen from the outside, and so on. For a partner business, that's always a very nice component because it's very quickly done, even within, I would say, a meeting that you have with a customer, for simply showing what the solution can do and how reporting works. We're not going to show that today. That will also be part of next week's session. And then we have the Pulsar agent. I always say that's where the music plays. I know Lutz likes to say that's where the magic happens. In the end of the day, a lot of stuff is happening on the Pulsar agent. So the system is an agent-based solution. That means you install the Pulsar agent on servers and clients on Macs, Windows, and Linux systems. And there's a lot of functionality in here. I will do some name functionality dropping. So it is, as it says, for monitoring, so meaning performance monitoring, but also service monitoring that runs on the systems. It's for IDS, IPS capabilities, vulnerability scanning. It's for client-based segmentation. It's providing patching functionalities. It's providing file integrity monitoring. Currently in the beta running is advanced persistent threat scanning or security. And there is quite a few more with alarming and so on. I will also come to that on the next slide. So that's the Pulsar agent. And basically everything that comes out of these four components that has been the original core product or the core platform, and all the information coming out of these are aggregated in a dashboard. And within the dashboard, then you also see a lot of alarming capabilities and a lot of automation or correlation happening. Over time, the market was asking for an additional feature, that is a SIEM feature. So customers approached us and said, look, that is already really great what you have in here, but we have more IT than only kind of the Enginsight. So can't we make use of syslogs from all the respective components? And that's when the SIEM was born, so to say, and is now also part of the overall offering, meaning that third-party components, may it be from an perimeter security, may it be from additional endpoint security, may it be from other infrastructure services, Microsoft, AWS, you see a list. There's a longer list also of supported itinerary. If there's anything we haven't supported yet, then we need to know, get the syslogs, and then basically integrate it into our SIEM system. The SIEM is a separate topic. We are not going to touch that today. I think we are also only briefly touching it next week. However, if someone has more interest on the SIEM, please do let me know, and then we organize a separate session. Now, in addition to the components, there has been the request, and okay, now we have a closed system of yours, but we as end customers or partners, we have already our own processes that we work with. How can you integrate into the processes? So that's basically the functionality, how we can provide also our data into third-party systems. For example, if we get alarms, can these be integrated into a ticketing system or similar, or into GRC systems, or the many more use cases and where to get data hooks into. So yes, that is possible. Of course, we want to support existing processes that there are. So overall, what we want is increase the security level, obviously give an excellent overview. It's not also maintaining, but also partly giving an excellent overview, and reducing costs, since we are aggregating so many different functionalities where a lot of single feature products are existing. It is obviously, if you are familiar with this all-in-one approach, then it's always also about cost reduction, right? So from a technology point of view, you would say, okay, I see all the words, I know all the words, I know a lot of technologies. Yes, So what we've done is in an old code base, integrated that all into one product. Now that's the one point, purely from the component point of view. Now let's switch to the other one. And I said, we also see security as a process. Now this will also pop open now. And when we look at the product, and also what Lutz will show in a bit, that we actually see this as a process, right? So if we're coming to a customer, it's also about the identification as a first process, or we say the identify phase, right? So the watchdog as an inventory tool that will be deployed, and it creates you a live and a persistent inventory. And to my knowledge, within all the years, that is normally not the case what a customer actually has. Yes, they might have some sort of inventory, maybe some sort of Excel-based documentation. However, that is very static and is definitely not a live inventory. Now, this live part, that becomes also relevant in a later phase again. Now, from a risk management point of view, you would say, fine, now we know what you have. So let's go in and see what's your, let's say, security or your vulnerability status. So that's where you would take the Hector and say, okay, let's push the Hector on the organization. If that is on a single machine, if that is on a single server, if that's on a range of servers, if that is on subnets, or if that's on bigger, let's say, variants of the network infrastructure, that's all configurable and it's all up to you. And the Hector doesn't care. It can be used as much as you want. But basically, you run the automated pen testing with the vulnerability scanning, with all the other attack vectors that there are, and you get a viable status of your health, so to say. And with everything out of the system, and if we have the time, Lutz will also show that shortly. You have the possibility of generating a report out of it that consists out of a management abstract, and that consists of a detailed findings overview, so that we have thought about both parts straight from the beginning. And that you actually not only have something in the system, but also have something that you can take out. May that be for the management part, or may that be also for compliance parts, if you need to document something that is part of a compliance requirement. Now, once you have now your system and your system overview, now let's move into the defense part of it, and let's move into not only establishing a status, but into an ongoing activity, right? And that's the detection phase. And this is a combination of the Pulsar agent and the observer and the watchdog, right? So if I look from the Pulsar agent, then here you have some functionalities like vulnerability management, right? Do understand what kind of IT landscape do I have? What kind of software do I have? What kind of vulnerabilities does the software stack that I carry in my organization have? Right? Do understand with an IDS what is happening on the clients, and can I monitor that on an ongoing basis? Is anything that is not the normal, right? So there's also machine learning capabilities in the client. So generating the baseline and understanding what's the abnormal of the baseline, and then what is it that I do about it. But we are still in the detection phase, right? You have file integrity monitoring capabilities that carries on the one hand on the system in itself, saying, okay, is there anything on the files of the system that is tampered with, or that are accessed, or that are running, or maybe that are also not running, right? Do understand what's happening on the machines. However, file integrity monitoring can also be on a file server level, saying that I have client on the file server. So is there anything that I want to restrict on that server, right? Do I want to get notified or understand if someone tries to access certain whatever financial files or R&D files that is not allowed to, respectively, that I need to monitor if anything happens on that part, right? So that is also possible. The APT is here still in brackets, because, as I said, that is something that is currently in the beta phase. If you want to test the solution, you can also test the beta of it if you want to see it. Right, and I said there are also the two other components, the observer with the web application security monitoring, or the website monitoring and scanning. Obviously, that can also be done on a regular basis to understand if anything changed or if there have been update processes for whatever WordPress components, and if some remainings of these update software is still on the server, or if everything has been cleaned up again, and so on. So also that is an ongoing activity. And obviously also with the inventory, with the watchdog, it is relevant to detect, is there suddenly a new machine, right? Is there suddenly a component that has not been there? So you also want to understand that in the detection phase. Now, if you detect something, then obviously you also want to react on something, right? I mean, the one is already good, but the one without the other would still, only bring you halfway. So there are some, let's say, technological automation. If you have an IDS, then you also want to have an IPS. You want to have the automatic reaction on it. And then there's also a big alarm management possibilities in the system. Is whatever, is a certain software coming up, or is a certain service not running, or is a certain X or Y event happening, and then do I get notified, and who's getting notified, right? In bigger organization, that might not only be the IT organization, but it might be certain administrators for this part or that part, or that branch or this building. That depends on how an organization built, but you want to fulfill the requirements of this alarm management, which is obviously also a compliance topic, understanding that if you see it from an organizational compliance requirement, then you have all this, who needs to be notified, when and how, and with what kind of criticality. Now, alarm is one thing. In the best case, you can also already automate your action on servers and clients based on alarms. If event X happens, what is it that I'm doing then? So yes, that's all possible, and that's all in the reaction phase. Now, the improvement phase is a permanent change to the better of the IT infrastructure, right? That can be with patching. I mentioned that before on Windows, Mac, and Linux systems. That can be with configuration management improvements or hardenings, as we say, based on standard controls, like, for example, the sys controls, saying what are best practices for this or that server configuration. And if I have this or that server configuration, can I actually automate the hardening, right? Yes, that can be done. That's why it's in the bracket and the beta functionality. But with the beta coming into production, then yes, that is possible. And then you can also decide, is that only for one server or for one client, or is that for a range of servers, or is that for everything that I have, right? So there are different automation levels that you can define. And also a common request that we have seen from customers, that's why it's is the topic of microsegmentation. Now, this is a client microsegmentation or client-based microsegmentation, which in our experience stands excellent next to network-based segmentation, but it's very easily configurable, saying that, okay, that client or that server should only be reachable by this or that client, so that you get an for the normal production situation, that you can segmentation. But obviously it also makes sense in terms of incident, saying that, okay, how can I quickly shut off certain parts or limit certain parts from communicating with others. So that is a process chain that we look at when we talk about the Enginsight and when we talk about security. As we all know, coming from IT, each of this phase creates a lot of data, and that data then gets combined together in this whole analyze phase, right? That only makes, so to say, all the detection, reaction, and improvement really come true, meaning that all the data gets correlated, gets analyzed, and then basically, gets brought up in the various phases, so we better understand what's happening in there. All right. That was now, I would say, a 25-30 minutes introduction towards what are the components, right, and what is the process, and each of the component comes into play into one or various process phases. Now, what we have thought about now giving and going into the UI is On the one hand, showing the multi-tenant capabilities, right? How does it really look like? How do you switch between accounts? Show you how is an alarm, what is an alarm, how is it configured? Show on the hector, because that always creates a big interest. How does it look like, defining this, and for especially how does the result look like? What can I see? And also give you a short overview on the Pulsar agent. That is what we have now planned for the next, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes. And once again, if you have questions, please post them so we can answer your questions. And everything that we have not answered today, technically, which you might have expected, would also be great to get that as feedback, so we can also include that in the next session next week. All right, with that, I will stop sharing my presentation. Lutz, and now it's all yours.
Right. Thank you, Thomas. It was a really, really good introduction to the topic itself and the company itself. And let me add one more thing, which I think is important to grab up this this autonomy thing. So when we look at the global market, when it comes to cybersecurity and especially cybersecurity tools, you will find a lot of Israeli and American products on the market, which are good, and but they're designed for large enterprises for Northern America, for the United States. So their economy there is kind of enterprise driven. They don't have SMBs so much. And in those enterprises, you've got a lot of personnel, you've got a lot of IT specialists, they got a lot of budget, and the regulatory framework is a different one than ours here in Europe. So when we take those tools here to Europe, to mostly SMBs, because 99% of the economy here are SMBs, so companies under 5,000 employees, those tools do not always fit to the kind of personnel, to the kind of IT specialists, and to the budget. And when we look to the past, when we had a problem, we bought a tool. Then we had the next problem, and we bought the next tool, and so on. And after that, you had a tool zoo, and this was kind of how to say, in a process way of thinking, hard to establish and achieve. And that was the reason and the idea behind Enginsight, that we have those functionalities, but are linked together in a nice process, in a slim process that makes automations a lot more easier possible. And it's made for Europe, for the specialists here, for the SMBs or for the companies here in Europe, and especially for the framework, for the legal framework that we have when we regard GDPR compliance stuff and so on. So as Thomas said, the platform, of course, is possible for customers to handle, but mostly it's made for the partners, because we build up the platform especially for partners. So at first, of course, the multi-tenancy is a big thing. So I'm switching right to this. As you can see here, we are in the showcase company here, where are a lot of clients. I will show you this in this operations centers, that you can see, hey, we've got the showcase, we've got the tenancies or the tenants behind it. But I want to switch, maybe when I'm a partner, I want to see, okay, what kind of, I'm a master, I want to go to the customer showcase, for example. So I'm switching to this tenant here, and this is quite easy, where I can see then every customer that is onboarded within an MSSP model, for example, has his own tenant that you definitely can divide from the others. So as you can see here, we're now in this customer showcase where you see all the servers and maybe the clients and the websites, and has no access to other tenants within this master showcase, for example. When I go to the master showcase here, then we have access to all the tenants above it, no, below it, sorry, that you can see, okay, we've got this customer showcase, we've got the master showcase, the second customer showcase, and so on. So it's quite easy to manage the customers within this nice tool and within the platform itself. Customer showcase, do I have some issues? Oh, I've got some alerts here. Docker is running. This is kind of a, I would say, monitoring alarm or alert that is created here. But you can create a lot of alerts and automated processes behind it from out of the topics IT management, IT monitoring, and also, of course, IT security. So, and that's why I'm going to show now. So I'm switching to the showcase itself, which I personally like more. Sorry, Thomas. So I'm switching to here. And I want to have an especially use case built for Thomas, because Thomas now is, in my example, the IT responsible person at the partner. So I'm trying to switch now here to, yes, we are a host-based system with our agent, as Thomas said before. And Thomas, as an IT responsible person, is the one who wants to know if something on this virtual machine maybe changes. And he wants to have an alert for this. So I'm going to create an alert on the host exclusively with the tag Thomas. As we can see here, there's this virtual machine here. And I want to have now an overview about the alerts that are possible to build. So as I said, IT management, IT monitoring, and security. As what we can see here, what I think is a real nice event, somebody is trying to log in and he's doing this 6 times and this has failed. And at the 7th time, this was possible. So it is kind of an alert that I want to get, for example. And after he logged in 6 times wrong, the 7 times it worked. Now he's got more privileges, for example. I want to have this alert, for example, or monitoring topics like the hard disks. Are they full? Are they detected? Is there maybe unusual behavior within the internal network? What about the CPU? And so on and so on. What I personally like is blocked network attack. This is a proactive component that we added here, which is then coming from out of our agent. Or a failed plugin. Or what I want to look at is there a new installed software? Or is it not installed, which is kind of nice. So, but yes, I want to have it. A new software is installed, for example. And because when somebody is trying to get in and he's losing this 6 times, now the 7 times works, he's got more privileges and he's able to install a software on this particular server. I definitely want to know this, and I want to have an automation after that. So I can use webhooks or own scripted plugins to individualize this way here within the platform. This was just an example, but there are many, many other alerts that are possible with the platform and coming out of the sensors, which Thomas described, and also coming out of the agent. But as I said, sensor, did I say sensor? Yes, I said. Let's switch to those. And 2 sensors we have. Yes, you cannot protect what you don't know. That's yeah, that's a rule in cybersecurity. So of course, there we have the inventory or build the inventory with the sensor watchdog. Every component has this name, and the watchdog is kind of the dog sniffing around and finding all the assets live within the network, no matter how many segments you will have in this network. And sometimes it's funny because when we do proof of values at the customer side with the partners, you will find not only switches, printers, servers, or clients. Sometimes you'll find a Timu radio that an employee has ordered from the internet and plugged into the network. So yes, you want to know that, and you want to have a live inventory, not only for management or security reasons, but also for compliance and regulatory reasons. Maybe one of your customers wants to be ISO 27001 certificated. Yes, this is one of the controls that he has to fulfill. After you've found your IPs, you definitely want to have the pen testing. And now we're switching to the dark side of the force. And let's check out the first pen test. And there we have these 4 questions that are coming over and over again. And those questions are: where? Do I have which problem? How bad is the problem? And how to fix the problem? or how to get rid of the problem. As you can see here, those were the targets. We got those 7 targets here, pen tested. And in the dashboard itself, of course, it's important for you and for the, I would say for the C-level of the client. What about the severities? What about the affected areas and the categories, and how to get rid of those problems? Let's switch to the summary. And let's take the cliche of the efficient German engineers here. Yes, we think that every administrator around the world wants to have a kind of a list where he knows, okay, what is the problem and how bad is the problem? So where to start to find the way of the most less risk, because you cannot find the way without risk. It's not impossible. For this case, you have to unplug the internet from the customer side, but you want to have the way of the less risk. And you can find it here from the view of a potential hacker. Yes, for example, we found this CVE here. It's on top of the list. It's critical, and we have got the risk score of 6,000, which is quite high. A lot of CVEs later, we come to, let's say, an invalid certificate. And I definitely want to have not only the severity and the risk score and what's the problem, but also how to fix the problem. A recommendation how to get rid of this within, I would say not null time, but with less effort than before. So in this case, it's a nice example. Yes, please replace this invalid certificate by a valid one. Or we find others, not only CVEs, common credential store, with also a recommendation here to get rid of those problems. And this is nice because you can use the most efficient way to detect things out of the view of a potential hacker and also get rid of those problems. But we're always talking about economical damage for companies within the topic of cybercrime. But we're in Europe. And in Europe itself, we have lawyers. And this is kind of interesting here because I want to know if the customer, for example, is vulnerable according to GDPR. In this case, we have got this SSL encryption topic. So this violates the DSGVO, so the GDPR regulations in Europe. So the recommendation is, yes, please use TLS 1.2 and 1.3. What I want to say is we're not only protecting against hackers, we're also protecting against lawyers within this legal framework here in Europe. These are all the tests that he's running, and you will get an individual result every time you do the pen test. And you can compare it because it's part of the process and it's part of the platform. It's usable unlimited. So you can say, okay, do one pen test, find the problems, get rid of those problems, and do the same pen test again for the customer to have a comparison. And this maybe could be one of the services that you're offering to the customer, to have pen tests regularly and to have, so the possibility to look from the view of a hacker every month or every quarter, for example. I want to show you one of this pen test results. Of course, reporting is an important one. And before we started this session here, I created, I can see it here. I created this security audit as a PDF. Of course, it's possible to white label it so that you have your own CI on it, your own logos on it. And you can also write it down, made with love from your company, so that you have the descriptions, that you've got the audit plan, the defined actors, the target groups, and of course, the management summary. Because as IT guys, we speak IT. And the customer itself, or the C-level of the customer, the one who pays, is speaking, Thomas, what is BWL in English? Pardon?
Business.
Yeah, he's talking business language. Thank you. So he needs some diagrams. He needs to get the information right on point without further explanations. So of course, there's this management views over here. And of course, the development of the risk score over time, the top 20 riskiest targets, and so on and so on. And then for the tech guys, for every finding, you've got an own page. And this is so nice because you can see here then from the customer side of view, you have the comparisons, you've got your recommendations, for example, and your services that are coming out of your company to the customer to help get rid of those problems caused by attackers. And with this view of the potential attacker, then you can strengthen your own defense or the defense of the customer within every tenant for every client, no matter how big it is, no matter how small it is, no matter how his development in the way of digitalization is. Yes, we're a host-based system. And yes, we are within one agent. This is important. One agent on every server and every client to have a multi-layer defense and the detection of attacks within the internal IT. Why do I say one agent? I mean, it's important. In the past, as I said, there were single tools, and you have got a single tool for every functionality. In case now we have here like 7 single tools combined to one, or 7 functionalities combined to one. Yes, we programmed it all on our own. And I was giving the tag Thomas to this virtual machine, and now let's have a look on this. And this is quite nice because we get rid of the silos provided by single tools and have this slim process that is actually working together. Of course, monitoring is a big topic. Yes, monitoring says, what's the life science? What about the hard disk? What about the CPU? What about the RAM? And so on. But also, what kind of software is on this particular server here, the 2012 R2, and what is allowed for the software to do, what kind of services, connections, or processes running on this. But we want to know what kind of software is on it, and from the view of the defender, what kind of CVE vulnerability is caused by this software on this particular server. Yes, we have got this software in this version. Yes, there's caused this CVE. We are host-based systems, so yes, we have the validity to say this CVE is definitely there. You don't want to chase false positives. So we can say, yes, it is green. And of course, it's critical red on top of the list. And then you can start here and have the most efficient way with further on automation if you want to. For example, every update is possible to get in automated, or the configuration checklist, for example, how to configure this device in the most secure way, not only recommended by us, but also recommended by IT experts and cybersecurity experts themselves. Now, I would say this is digital hand washing to have an opportunity to get to clean the digital hands. And after that, I want to have a proactive and automated process with the IDS IPS, because most of the attacks are coming on Friday night, occurring on New Year's Eve or Christmas. So in this case, when nobody is in the company or nobody's at your company. So yes, we want to have the last mile secured with a proactive process with the IDS IPS, intrusion detection and prevention. Most of you will know it from the firewall, but we bring it down to the server and the clients. And this is quite good because when we have the modern workspaces and the modern work life, a client could be at the home office, a client could be at the airport to check the mails, and you want to have this transparency and proactivity even there. I'm showing this to the C-levels, of course, because something is moving. I assume that you're technicians, so I'm showing to the list, which is kind of a little bit more interesting. And I'm looking for fancy attacks. Yes, Log4j. Log4j was a kind of an, interesting occurrence, I guess 1.5 or 2 years ago. So maybe this case comes and the customer says, hey, I have read about this weakness, Log4j, within the newspaper. Do I have this problem? Then you can say now, yes, you had it. And we solved it 2 months ago because we knew it first. And let's check out, I'm looking for the time, this one. So it gives you the absolute control about what's going on inside. There's absolute transparency and possible to have efficient ways of automated punching back, how to say that. So how to read it? What's the profile of the attacker? This IP address, I don't know it. Maybe could be the connection here to the inventarization. Could be a new employee. But the new employee is doing port scans and trying to get usage of this weakness to make a remote code execution from outside. So it's possibly not a new employee, and especially not at 3:30 in the morning. So yes, it is the attacker, and you want to have him stopped right here when he wants to gain access. This is enterprise functionality for SMB pricing and within the European legal framework. And if that is not cool enough, guys and girls, you also see where this problem occurs. So yes, it's a host-based system. Of course, we can say on these 3 machines, there was this weakness, we found the attacker, and we blocked him out again. So you will definitely have a good management here for the customer. And of course, everything is, how to say, possible to have a report on it, possible to add more know-how, of course, from your side. And it's a dolmetscher between IT and business talk and gives you opportunity to have more arguments, for example, for the customer to make an upsell. For example, when we look at the dashboard, when we have the risk score or the scatter plot for the most vulnerable assets. So this could be the newest servers that you've sold to the customer, which are blue, everything's fine. Then this could be, I would say, the laptop from the IT, but those 2 red dots here could be the laptops of the C-level at the customer side. And the C-level is exposed to social engineering. Bosses, or I won't say bosses, but bosses always have ego. And they say, with this combination, yeah, I don't need 2-factor authentication. Nobody is trying to hack me. But then you can say, yes, you're exposed. Yes, please, let's do a 2-factor authentication, for example. And then you have got the possibility and the argument for doing an upsell. Or, hey, dear customer, for the segmentation, we need more firewalls. Here's our offer. Or, dear customer, you're exposed and you've got ego. Let's make an awareness training, for example. So you have got a lot of arguments to link other services and other know-how transfers to the customer to have a good upsell and a happy customer. Happy customer, happy life, so to say. And this is also possible. Of course, we have got the web skin and the CM as well, but those I will leave out for today because of the time and so that we have got some more topics for the actual technical web session within the next week. So
Right.
I guess we have got some questions here. Or Thomas, do you want to add something that I actually missed?
It's all fine. There are no technical questions, which either means not either, which means that we have done an excellent job. So we have explained everything in a way that people are not asking questions. So for us,
one thing. Pardon. Let me
yes.
show one thing. I switched back to the pen test, and we're always talking about automation and a comparison. So I just wanted to show that it's possible to schedule pen tests. Like, hey, every Sunday of the month, Saturday or Sunday of the month, I want to have a pen test within the network of the customer, for example, so that on Monday you also already have the results ready to make a discussion and to, let's say, have the newest routines for the next week or for the next month, for example. And also what I personally like when it's working here, advanced settings. Hey, do I want to include printers or not? Everybody knows that printers are kind of princesses. So yeah, for the first scan, I don't want to include printers, for example. Or add own password lists, because there may be some employees who don't want to change their password. So yes, you can add this too. So it's a standard product that it's possible to have quite individualized to your and the customer's needs. So it gets a tailored suit out of yeah, for the cybersecurity. Pardon. Wanted to
All
add
right,
it.
fine. As we have 16:58, I think we are running close to the end. So let me switch back to that one. All right, and basically bringing up the last page. I will provide the presentation as a PDF afterwards, where you see, where do you get demo access? Do sign up for the technical webinars coming up. Hoping that we caught your interest. Documentation is also a link in here, and if you have any specific question that you like to address, you reach Lutz or myself via the mentioned emails here. I would be very grateful for a small feedback, maybe in the Q&A session, just if and how you liked it. If you run out of time, then and you can't make it, then that's also fine. As I said, I would appreciate it a lot. With that, I think, Lutz, thank you very much. We are done.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you very much to everyone, and hopefully either read a few by email or see you next week in the technical webinar session. All right, thanks.